And these cards, I actually had written it in my sermon to talk about the cards this morning, so that I could just say how simple it is. If you look around and somebody is missing and you haven't seen them for a while, it takes 20 seconds to grab one of those cards and just say, I miss you, are you okay? And pop it in the post, the mail, or put it in an email, fire it off to somebody. And it could be the vehicle by which God touches that person with love. That happens. That happens. And Peggy told me also before the service about how often she's felt those nudges, you know, those moments when somebody comes to your mind and you think, oh yes, I must call them, or oh yes, what's going on with them? I suspect that there's no shortage of nudges going on in our congregation. And if we just followed them, God's ministry of love would be flourishing to the full here. I think more than that. I think the more we pay attention to those nudges, the more God will send. It is the Spirit's work, and the Spirit is an opportunist. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Part of the challenge is in the seeking, and the other part is in the recognizing. So I thought it might be helpful just to share a few stories with you, short little vignettes this morning of places where I have seen God. See whether it looks like that to you too. I went to the website for the Neighbors in Need offering and just pulled out 3 of the stories that particularly spoke to me. In Millbridge, Maine, there's a program called Mano a Mano, which is based in a United Church of Christ congregation and offers a ministry to farm workers. They started out very simply. It was just a Thursday night English language class. And they were surprised, they shouldn't have been, but they were, that the workers who came to learn English were so passionately engrossed in it, so determined and committed, that after full days working in the field, when clearly they were exhausted, they still came without fail to those Thursday nights and worked hard. And as the classes continued, obviously the people got to know each other, the people from the church and the farm workers learning their English and able more and more to express themselves to each other. And so the workers, they weren't asking for anything, but they just started painting a picture of what their lives were like. And again, it was an experience full of surprises for the church members who thought, housing, this guy didn't get paid as he was promised. And there were just issues that came up. And more they got involved in a social justice kind of element in supporting the farm workers, the migrant laborers in their town. And it has become an absolutely vibrant program. They offer after-school study sessions for kids. They offer one-on-one tutoring to help young people with their education. They collect money for much-needed scholarships. And I see God there, not only in the different things they're doing, but in the whole progression of it. It is that Spirit opportunist who takes a little thing we offer and just builds on it more and more as we're ready and, as we can do it, and turns it into something bigger than where our imagination started. God is like that. It is a sure sign of God's meddling. And I see God in the way that the human spirits are thriving on all sides. That is what God does. Blesses everybody, enlarges everybody. Project number 2, called Indie Kids. It's an online newspaper, and it's all to do with social justice, aimed about junior high level. So again, it was the brainchild of some United Church of Christ person. This time it was somebody who had a vision about developing a social conscience amongst these young kids on the verge of being teenagers, moving into a very selfish time. What could we do to expand their horizons, to make them care about people other than themselves? So you go online and you look at this newspaper. The current issue is PDF, 4 pages, yeah? And it covers Islamophobia, El Nino, and who's affected by it this year, racism in photography, the outcomes of the various trials after the police shootings, the water in Flint, Michigan, deportation of immigrants, And probably this was their favorite, How You Can Generate Energy from the Methane in Sewage. Very exciting reading. I defy you to find more conscience packed into 4 pages anywhere. The way they do it is that they gather kids together in workshops, different group of kids every time, and then set them to loose with the computers, finding the information they need. And all the stories in that newspaper are written by kids aged 9 to 13. How about that? They do mostly come from New York City, but their newspaper is read all across the country. And I especially see God in the little girl on their video, 11 years old maybe, who said, I'm one of the younger ones. This has helped me to find my voice, and I really feel like I'm making a difference. And if God is in it, and I think God is, that will be true. She is making a difference in ways she can't begin to imagine. One more story. The San Francisco Night Ministry. That's been going for a long time. It was one of the field ed opportunities back when I was in seminary in Berkeley. The night ministry team is just there. They just go out onto the streets to offer compassionate care to anyone in any kind of distress, every night of the year. I see God going into overdrive in that program, just pouring love into all kinds of desperate places. On the website, it talks about a guy named Mason who survives by panhandling at the Burger King. And he stands by the drive-through line, asking the people in cars for money. And the night minister just started befriending him, just struck up a conversation and then would stop back by a couple times a week. How you doing, Mason? It gave Mason just that extra bit of confidence that he needed, that extra bit of support to see if he couldn't find a stable place to live. And he's got himself into a housing unit. He's still panhandling, but now he's talking about finding a job. He's thinking about various things that he could do. I don't know how realistic it is, but with his buddy to help him, I expect some of it will happen. And again, I see God just in the simplicity of it. What happens when human beings listen to each other and are there for each other? I would love it if we could tell stories like that about the ministries of our church. I would love it if we could say, this church is a place where I have found God. I know some of us will look for God most of all in beauty and inspiration, what we talked about 2 weeks ago. And some of us will find God in those moments of intellectual clarity where something clicks in our brains, which is what we talked about last week. But those are both individualistic, almost consumerist ways of meeting our hunger for God. It's okay, it works, it's okay. But that New Testament reading points us to where the knock you over, God is here kind of experience happens. It says a mind-blowing thing, I don't know if you caught it, that God's love isn't perfect until it finds expression in us. The passage says God's love is made perfect in us. In other words, God has an agenda too. We aren't the only ones seeking. All that is required of us is that we open ourselves to care. And then, given half a chance, that opportunist spirit moves in. And then we won't have to worry about the main thing being the main thing, because it will be right in our face. When God lives in us, what happens is joy. You can't miss it. It's unmistakable. It's time for our offering now.